Okay.
Okay, good evening, everybody. If everyone could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance before we start. I pledge allegiance to the
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If everyone could just remain standing just for one moment, in a tradition that we have here with the Bohemia Civic Association, if we can just observe a brief moment of silence for our troops and our veterans. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Patrick Fife. I am the president of the Bohemia Civic Association. And on behalf of the Islip Civic Coalition, I'd like to welcome all of you to our Meet the Candidates night for the United States Congressional seat in the 2nd Congressional District here in New York. And we are very happy to have both candidates here tonight, Liuba Gretchen Shirley and Peter King. We thank you for coming and giving us your time and giving us the opportunity to hear from you both. Before we begin, I just want to very quickly give an overview of the 2nd District for those of you that don't know. It's not just relegated to this area here, it actually extends all the way west to the Wantagh-Massapequa area in Nassau County, and then heads east to Bayport, Blue Point, and even parts of Patchogue to the east, and all along the South Shore, and up past even, not past, I think it's right about where the LIE is on the northern line in some cases. So it's a very large area. It's obviously a very important position, and for that reason, again, we're honored to have both candidates here tonight. Before I go any further, I just did also want to give a brief introduction to the Islip Civic Coalition and explain what we are and how we came together. You've probably never heard of us, and that makes sense. The Islip Civic Coalition really just got started a couple weeks ago. It's an organization that's made up of the Ronkonkoma, Greater Sayville, Bohemia, Oakdale, and Idlehour Civic Associations. We've all talked together as a group, our board members, and realized we have a lot in common in terms of a community. We don't necessarily agree on everything, but we agree on a lot of things and major issues. And we also agree that there's a real need to have more communication and more dialogue among the residents and have forums like this collectively as a community. So we came together. Really, I have to thank the Greater Sayville Civic Association. They were the ones that kind of brought us all together a couple weeks ago for a meeting, and really were the ones to get this event started. And so this is our first event that we put on together. We've had some joint civic association meetings between some of the groups, but this is our first collective event, and we hope it's the first of many, and we hope everybody finds it to be very informative. So I just want to pass the microphone very briefly to Linda Hunt. Linda's just going to introduce a couple of other people who are here tonight, and then after that we're just going to very briefly go over the ground rules so that everybody in the audience understands how the night's going to work, and then we'll get on with the Meet the Candidates session. Thanks.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. As Patrick said, I would like to just introduce a few of the civics in attendance tonight, as well as other distinguished guests. So from the Greater Sayville Civic, we have Christine Sarney, President. I'm the Secretary, Linda Hunt. Stand up. She wants to. All right, Ronkonkoma, you're next up.
Oh, all right. I'm not there.
Eileen. Eileen Panico, President, and past President Bruce Edwards. And we also have the Director, Jerry Navardi. And from the Bohemia Civic, we have President Patrick Fife, Vice President Myron Orgelis, and Secretary Anthony Piccarello. All righty. How did I do? All right with your name?
Yeah, close enough.
Piccarello, right? Is that better?
That's
All
it.
right. Okay, see. Also, a big thanks to the 5th Precinct. Thank you very much. And Representative Phil Lindsay. And also, we could clap, yes. Also, to our students, Harrison and James, who are going to keep everything tidy and in order tonight. Thank you all, and let's have a good evening and be respectful of each other. Thank you. Okay, just go over the ground rules quickly, which is more for you than for them. So the way this will start is that you'll have 5 minutes at the beginning to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourselves. And then we are going to ask a series of 10 questions. For each of those 10 questions, you'll have 2 minutes to answer. And we'll go back and forth as to who gets to answer first. And we will then end with a 3-minute close where you get to give us your final thoughts and goodbyes. And that should be it. We think that the 10 questions that we've come up with will have covered most of the platforms that people are interested in and that we're sure that you want us to hear. And the way we will let you know about the time is our great timekeepers here, James and Harrison, are going to use the piano as your key. So when you have 1 minute left, you're going to hear this sound.
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Wow. 30 seconds, then 15 seconds.
Oh, okay. At 30 seconds left, you're going to hear this sound. And at 15 seconds left, you're going to hear... And they are very much in charge, so I'd be careful. I'd be careful. Okay, any questions? All right, I think we're ready to start. So the first questions that we have are actually Eileen.
It is me, right?
Oh, introduction questions. They're going to introduce themselves. Okay.
I want to ask you a question.
Should we flip a coin? Does it matter? Do you want to?
Ladies first.
Ladies first. I like that. Sounds good to me. Okay. So you're going to go 5 minutes to introduce yourself and talk about your platform, and you'll hear the keys when your time is up. Okay.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Shirley. I'm running for Congress in New York's 2nd District. I'm not a politician. I'm the mom of 2 small children. My children are 2 and 4. I'm the daughter of a public school teacher. And I'm the granddaughter of immigrants, and I am an economic development expert. I have an MBA in economics from New York University. I worked for the United Nations Association for many years, and I worked for the UN Foundation, and I managed the merger of those 2 multi-million-dollar organizations. I have worked all over the world. I've worked in Africa and Eastern Europe and the Middle East, and my career has been to help working families improve their livelihoods, build better lives for their families. And I'm running for Congress because, frankly, I've had enough. I've had enough of career politicians and millionaires in Congress making really bad decisions for the rest of us. And I actually asked Mr. King if he would host a town hall meeting last year, and he told me that it would diminish democracy. And I held a town hall, and hundreds of people from across the district showed up. And last week, Mr. King actually called that town hall. He said it was mob rule, that he wouldn't succumb to mob rule. That's exactly what's wrong with Washington, that we have people who are not willing to do the job, to talk to the constituents. And I have spent more than a year at this point crisscrossing our district and talking to all of you, getting to know your stories. We have had roundtables and meet and greets and town halls and discussions. And I've learned what issues you're dealing with. I personally know what it's like to deal with crippling student loan debt. I have talked to so many people across this district who cannot afford their prescription medicine and their groceries in the same week. Almost half of Americans who are in bankruptcy are there because of medical bills. And most of those people had health insurance. They were doing everything right, and they're still in bankruptcy. There are people in our country who literally die because they can't afford to see a doctor. And Mr. King voted to take health care away from 74,000 people in our district last year. I am fighting for improved and expanded Medicare for all, because healthcare is a basic human right, and we fight for human rights. And the tax bill. There are so many of my neighbors who are leaving Long Island because they can't afford the taxes on the homes where they raise their families. And despite 25 years in office, Mr. King did not protect us against the tax bill. He actually said that he was in basic agreement with the tax bill, and that's not helping our country right now. Long Island, half of Long Islanders will see our taxes go up. People, I cannot tell you how many times I've knocked on someone's door who said, I'll vote for you this year, but we're moving. We can't afford to live here anymore. We'll be gone by the next election. That's something I've heard repeatedly in this district. We have public schools that are drastically underfunded. We have a mass incarceration problem in this country. We have rising sea levels. And too many young people, too many people that I grew up with are leaving Long Island because they can't afford to buy homes here. In the last 25 years, our housing prices have gone up. The cost of education has gone up. Our taxes have gone up. and our wages have stayed stagnant. It is time to make sure that we are fighting for working people. Giving tax cuts to the top 1% of people in this country does not help strengthen our economy. We need real tax cuts for working Americans so that we can actually build better lives for our family. When we have more money in the hands of working Americans, we go out and we buy groceries, we start small businesses, we are the job creators. We need someone who will fight for working people. And that's what this campaign has been about. It has been a grassroots movement from the very beginning. We have Democrats, we have Republicans, we have people who have never been involved in politics ever before knocking on doors. Because we're fighting for working people. We have not taken a dime of corporate PAC money. And the reason for that is that I want to be only responsible to you. If you take money from corporate PACs, that's who you're voting for. That's who you're responsible to. Mr. King has taken almost more than 40% of his funding comes from corporate PACs. So you need to take money only from your constituents, only from individuals. Our average contribution is $107. $107. And we have more individual contributors than anyone who has ever run against Mr. King because this is a grassroots movement. It should not matter what your income is, what your gender is, what your sexual identity, what your race. It should not matter. Everyone in this country deserves a fighting chance to build a strong life for their family. And it is time for Washington to start listening to us. We need change. Was that my 30 seconds or my
30 seconds.
We need change, and we need to make sure that we have representatives who are listening to us. And that is why I'm running for office. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm Pete Caney. I grew up in New York, worked my way through college. The money I got when I was in college as a union member, I was able to pay my way through Notre Dame Law School. My father was a cop. I know what it's like to be blue collar. I've worked hard all my life. And no one has worked harder in Congress with people of Long Island than I have. I am proud to run on my record. I have a record as being the most bipartisan member of Congress of all 435 members for 4 years in a row, and for the last year, the 10th highest in the country, and also the highest for all of New York City and Long Island. I work across the aisles to get the job done, and I get results. Anyone who was here after 9/11 knows how hard I fought for the benefits for those families of those who were killed. Anyone from then until now knows how hard I fought along with Senator Gillibrand and Jerry Nadler and Carol Maloney to get the 9/11 health care bill through. Get it extended 5 years ago, and also this year alone, we had beat back efforts to defeat it. So I am in there fighting all the time. After Sandy, I was the one who was out there. The highest offer on the table was $27 billion. With my efforts in the House and Chuck Schumer's in the Senate, we got $61 billion in aid for people in Long Island, New York City, and New Jersey. And that was mainly because of me and also Chuck, to share the credit there. I work hard for the people of Long Island. This is my job. I work around the clock, I work independently, and I get the job done. That's why last year in the United States Senate, Chuck Schumer got up on the floor of the Senate to credit me for my courage and my integrity. This is a Democratic senator on the floor of the United States Senate crediting me for working so hard. Governor Cuomo said, God bless Peter King for my efforts in the Congress. When anyone who tries to say, I'm not out there fighting and I'm not there working, really doesn't know what they're talking about. He's not telling the truth. Now, we're going to come to other issues. MS-13. MS-13 is terrorizing Long Island. There are people, in one period of 18 months, 25 people were killed. I worked together with Commissioner Seen, who was the police commissioner, and also with Pat Ryder in Nassau County, and with both DAs. Now, Tim Seen, who's a DA now, and also Madeline Singers. And we worked together. We got the President of the United States to come in here twice. We got the Attorney General to come in. And as a result of that, MS-13 is on the ropes. MS-13 is on defense. And that involves saving human lives. And we've had people, including my opponent, who say they want to abolish ICE. If you abolish ICE, you're putting lives at risk. You talk to any police officer. You talk to the sheriff of Suffolk County, a Democrat. You talk to the district attorney of Suffolk County, a Democrat. And he will tell you ICE is absolutely essential if we're going to defeat MS-13 and save human lives. That's just the reality we have to deal with. And I will always stand up, whether it's my own party, whether it's the other party, whether it's the political directors, I will stand up. I will stand by the police. I will not cave into the Black Lives Matter movement. I will not say we have to apologize for what the police do in protecting our communities. We have to put the safety of people first. On foreign policy, I am still on the Intelligence Committee, I'm on the Homeland Security Committee, and we worked extremely hard. Right now, under President Trump, we have crushed the ISIS caliphate. We have crushed the ISIS caliphate, which is spreading across the Middle East, and they are also on defense. However, it's a 24/7 job. Being on the Homeland Security Committee and the Intelligence Committee, I'm constantly working with the CIA, the FBI, the JTTFs, the National Counterterrorism Center, also the Suffolk County Police, Nassau County Police, and New York City Police. Because we are the #1 terrorist target in the world. That's the reality. And I've been involved again in fighting to make sure we get a Homeland Security funding we need, whether it's against the Bush administration, the Obama administration, or the Trump administration, when they try to cut back on Homeland Security funding, including the Obama administration, which tried to cut back on the Secure the City program, which provided millions and millions of dollars that we needed to protect ourselves against a dirty bomb nuclear attack. So my record is out there. It's independent, it's hardworking, it's not catering to any special interest, and that's why I received this support, not just business. I'm not anti-business, and also I'm pro-labor. The fact is, you can't be dividing people between who has money, who doesn't, whose business, whose labor. I work with both. That's why I've received so many labor endorsements of almost the entire building trades, carpenters, operating engineers, sheet metal workers, the Teamsters. I'm working, again, across the aisle on the Bush-Lewis Act to protect the pensions of Teamster workers. And also, yes, I do get the support of people who are in business, because again, it's business that provides a job, there's workers who fill those jobs. And that's why unemployment right now is its lowest level in years. Employment is at its highest. We've got to keep that going. Thank you.
I have never called for the abolition of ICE. That's just a lie.
Thank you, thank you. We're not
Have
going
you
to
defended ICE?
Wait,
Have you defended
we're not
ICE?
going to do that. We're only going to ask some questions.
Yes,
and
yes.
then this is not a debate, it's to meet the candidates.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you. So, you started, we're going to go to Mr. King first. Which education programs will you support and which will you work to eliminate? For those that you support, what's your plan for funding them? That's your first question.
Well, basically, funding for education primarily at the state and local level. At the federal level, certainly anything involving children with disabilities, as far as backing up student loans, those are all the issues that I would be involved in. And also, it's important, I think, that we do provide more funding for schools that do not have the funding for themselves. And again, I open my record on education as anyone's in the Congress. But again, most of the funding is at the lower level here. At the school board level, we want to keep local control. There's more federal funding you have coming in to local schools, that gives them more, federal government more jurisdiction and takes away the sovereignty of local school boards. But again, my record on education, I would put it, I say it's second to none.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I have two children. I'm the daughter of a public school teacher. Education is something that very much concerns me because we have public schools that are drastically underfunded. We have an administration that is siphoning money away from our public schools to give to charter schools. They want to take money away from public schools to fund the purchase of guns for teachers. Teachers are already overworked. They're already social workers. They're already educators. They shouldn't also be bodyguards for their students. We need to make sure that schools have the resources that they need. There are so many teachers that I have spoken to across this district who are spending their own money out of pocket to buy school supplies. That is something that needs to change. We need to make sure that our public schools are funded because right now, your zip code determines the resources that your school gets. If you grew up in Amityville or you grew up in Massapequa, you get a very different type of education. And when it comes to school loans, I know what it's like. I pay $1,000 a month in school loans. And there are people all across the district that I have talked to who have crippling student loan debt. And this is hurting our economy. They cannot afford to buy homes. They cannot afford to start businesses. They can't start families. Mr. King actually voted against letting students refinance their student loans at low interest rates. I would support allowing students to refinance their student loans so that they have a fighting chance of paying them off. Right now, our government is making money off the profits of student loans. We owe more collectively in student loan debt in this country than we do in credit card debt. And we saw it with the housing bubble. When you have that much of a drastic increase in debt in one industry, you know you're about to have a crash. We also need to let students discharge their loans in bankruptcy. If they need to declare bankruptcy, right now students can't discharge student loans. We have people who are on Social Security who are still paying student loans. This is a crisis, and it needs a real solution.
Thank you. We're going to have you start. Our next question. School shootings are prevalent in this country. What's your plan to keep our children safe? Please be specific, and again, how will you fund your plan?
We need common sense background checks. We need universal background checks. My mother is a public school teacher. She called me about 2 months ago from her desk crying because she was in the middle of a lockdown drill. She's 64 years old, and 2 of her students went to the bathroom, and the lockdown drill started, and she had to lock them in the hallway. And she could see them through the glass pane in the door, and they were having a panic attack. And she called me because she was that upset. That is what we're doing to our students. That is what we're doing to our teachers. We are teaching 5-year-olds how to live through lockdown drills. That needs to change. We need universal background checks. Mr. King will tell you that he supports universal background checks. He actually voted against background checks at gun shows. So the reality is you can go into a gun store and fail a background check and go to a gun show and legally buy that weapon. We need universal background checks. Mr. King also has actually supported transferring gun ownership between family members and friends without background checks. That is effectively a straw purchase. We need universal background checks, and any responsible gun owner will support that. We need to make sure that we are banning military-style assault weapons that should be on the battlefields, not in the hands of civilians. We need to get rid of bump stocks. We need to ban high-capacity weapons. We can be responsible gun owners and have responsible gun reform. And school shootings are it's rising, but it's just a small percentage of the shootings that we see in this country. Children in this country are 16 times more likely to die by gun violence than in any other developed country. We have a problem with guns, and we need common sense gun reform.
Well, I agree with what you get the fact from. The fact is, it's big blues me folks here in the audience, but I get a F rating from the NRA. I've supported what's the assault weapon ban. I've supported Mayor Bloomberg on every conceivable gun control measure. It's my bill, which, by the way, the Democrats introduced my bill. When they make motions in the House, they introduced my bill as the bill on the assault weapons, on background checks. We can go through the whole list on every piece of gun control legislation I have voted for. I stand there, and again, it's not always popular with people in my own party, but I believe coming from New York, knowing the issues that we face here, I have gone out front on this, and that's why I've received the support of Mayor Bloomberg very strongly in this, and others over the years. So again, all I can say, if you disagree with my gun record, then you're the same size as the NRA, because they also disagree with my gun record. I believe that it's absolutely essential that people be free in their homes, that they not be intimidated by people with guns. And that's why background checks are essential. The assault weapon ban, I've supported over the years. And I can go down the whole list. I don't know of any gun measure at all in recent years I have not been in the forefront of. In fact, the Democratic Party has adopted my bill. It was my bill on background checks that they've adopted. So again, on this, to me, it's maybe she's trying to create some issue that's not there. But again, Mayor Bloomberg is probably the foremost supporter in the country of gun regulation. He's out actively supporting the Democrats. He's made an exception. He's strongly supporting me in this election because of my record on gun regulation and gun safety.
Thank you.
You need to take a deep breath. I know how hard this is. I give you a lot of credit. Okay, so Congress recently dismantled the healthcare system that was in place with no replacement.
I'm sorry, I missed that. What's the first part?
Recently dismantled the healthcare system with no replacement. So it started to take away what was in place, and we haven't really put anything back in place. The cost of health insurance and prescription drugs is rising with no relief in sight. It is obvious that changes are going to need to be made on the federal level, and what do you see as the solution to solving our health care and insurance crisis moving forward?
First of all, I strongly believe that every American is entitled to health care, but the reality is you have to find a way to get it done. You have to find a way to get it done that works. And that's why I work closely with Democrats and Republicans on this issue. It's why any number of medical organizations, patient advocates have supported my position. That's why last year I voted for the bill to go from the House to the Senate, and then I said clearly that I would not support it if certain changes are not made. And that would include Medicaid expansion, to be maintained among others, and also pre-existing conditions. When it became clear in the Senate that a number of senators I've spoken to decided not to go with those changes, I came out before the Senate even voted on the bill. I came out against it. That's why a full-page ad was taken by hospitals and unions, commending me for my leadership on that, thanking me for the leadership I was showing in this, because I believe that we have to find a way to make sure that those who genuinely need health care get it, those with pre-existing conditions should be covered. We have to find a way to do that, and that's why, again, as I said, the major organizations are supporting me on this, and that's why I, in the House, made it clear I would send the bill to the Senate as long as certain conditions were there. When they were not met, I made it clear I was against it, and the bill would have been defeated when it came back to the House, even if Senator McCain had not defeated it in the Senate.
More than half of Americans in bankruptcy are there because of medical bills. 75% of those people had health insurance. They could not afford their premiums, their deductibles, and their co-pays. Mr. King voted to take health care away from 74,000 people in this district. And when the bill went to the Senate, he said, we'll see what happens. When it came back, he said, I can't vote for it now. It takes funding away from hospitals. The bill that he voted for took $14 million in funding away from 3 hospitals in this district. People called his office every day, and he refused to meet. I called his office personally 3 times in one day. We held a town hall because people were concerned that they were going to lose health care, and Mr. King refused to show up. We need improved and expanded Medicare for all. Everybody in this room has a story about how one time you had to fight with your insurance company. I have been fighting with my insurance company for months because my 1-year-old broke his leg, ended up in a body cast, and they're refusing to pay for the 2-night stay in the hospital. I have heard healthcare horror stories from everyone across this district, mothers who have called 65 different doctors and have not been able to get their children in. Either the insurance they weren't taking the insurance, they weren't taking new patients. I've met mothers who have slept on their children's bedroom floor to make sure that their kids were okay, and now pay out of pocket. People are going into bankruptcy. People can't afford their prescription drugs and their groceries. This is a problem, and this is why I'm fighting for improved and expanded Medicare for all. You want to talk about the cost? The Koch brothers put out a study to try to say it would be impossible to switch to improved and expanded Medicare for all. And the Koch brothers showed that it would actually save $2 trillion over the next 10 years, and we would insure 30 million more Americans. You would no longer pay your co-pays, your deductibles, your insurance premiums. You would actually save money. The average family of 4 would save $5,000 a year by switching to improved and expanded Medicare for all.
Equality is on the forefront of women's minds right now, as well as many other groups. Issues like the glass ceiling, less pay for equal work, and disadvantages in healthcare and childcare have been consistent roadblocks. What would you advocate for to address these types of issues?
Thank you for this important question. I am a mom. I have a daughter. These are issues that affect my life daily. If Mr. King had his way, women would not be able to have bodily autonomy, would not be able to make their own decisions about their lives. If he had his way, women would not be paid equal amounts of money for the same work. Mr. King has voted against paid family leave. He has voted against equal pay for work for women. He is against a woman's right to choose, even in the cases of rape or incest, and has actually said he supports jailing doctors who perform abortions. He voted with the rest of his Republican colleagues to take maternity coverage away from 13 million American women last year. We have the worst maternal mortality rate in the developed world. Women are dying in childbirth, and Black women are dying at 4 times the rate. We need to make sure that women can control their own bodies, that we have representatives who trust us to make the best decisions for our lives. We need paid family leave. We are one of 2 countries in the world, Papua New Guinea is the other, that does not have paid family leave. 1 in 4 women will go back to work 10 days after giving birth. That is a public health crisis. We, as a country, are not trusting women to make the best decisions. I actually put in a request to the Federal Election Commission to be able to use some of my campaign funds on childcare. And it was approved. It was a bipartisan decision. Even Fox News said it was the one bipartisan thing they could agree on. That is a way to break down barriers. Because right now we have so many millionaires in Congress because it takes a hell of a lot of money to take a year off of your life, give up your salary, and still pick up the cost of childcare and your mortgage and your school loans and run for office. We need more women in office. Right now, Congress is only 19% female. We need more people of color. We need more people from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds so that we start to have the conversations about how we have quality, affordable childcare for all.
Mr. Fine?
All right, great, attention.
Christine, you didn't let him answer.
Oh, I'm sorry, I walked away.
Okay.
I didn't let him answer. I'm very interested in what he has to say.
Okay. First of all, I fully agree that we need more women in politics. I'm very proud that my daughter is here tonight. She's the majority leader in the town of Hempstead. She's fighting for these rights, and she's going after them. When I talk about abortion, I have been for life. I've said it's a practical matter that there's never going to be any kind of vote involving rape or incest. But I do believe that the child deserves, the unborn child does deserve protection. If people disagree with that, that's fine. I understand that. But I am taking the position that I take. So that's on that. Now, as far as, I do believe women obviously should get equal pay for equal work. There's no doubt about that. And the position of women in this country is improving all the time. It should improve more. And I strongly defend women's rights. If we talk about abortion, that's one issue. Other than that, I will go across the board. I've been working with Ivanka Trump. I've been working with Democratic members of the House and Senate to get a concept of paid child care, child leave, because it is important more than ever now. We have two husbands, wife, both working, two spouses working in the family. It's essential that they have the opportunity to get child care for their children. I'm working on that, and I've met with both Democrats and Republicans. I was at a recent meeting with Senator Gillibrand and others, and again with Ivanka Trump. I'm mentioning her name because if you can get somebody on the Republican side, including people like Marco Rubio and others, to work with Democrats, this is an issue that has to be addressed, has to be faced, it is being, and I'm in the forefront of doing it.
I don't know who goes first, but okay. The CBO has reported that the national debt is $21 trillion and the deficit is $779 billion. Do you believe we need to lower the national debt and reduce the federal deficit? If so, what programs, if any, do you believe should be cut to lower the national debt and reduce the deficit? And if you are calling for new programs, how do you propose funding for these proposals without increasing the national debt or the federal deficit?
First of all, we have to have growth in the country. Growth is essential. If our economy grows, everything grows with it. We get more jobs. Remember, going back to President Reagan, when he cut taxes, people said it was going to bankrupt the country. The reality is he created 18 million new jobs. And at the end of Reagan's administration, the percentage of national debt as a percentage of gross domestic product was the same as it was when we had 18 million new jobs. And the country that went on, we defeated the Soviet Union, and we were into an era of prosperity. The same under John Kennedy when he cut taxes back in 1863. So I don't believe that raising taxes is what's going to reduce the deficit. You do it by growth, and obviously you have to look for cuts in spending. I know the president is asking for 5% cuts across the board. I don't know if that's practical, but having been the Nassau County Controller, having been through this, and having seen the benefits of having an expanding economy is the best way to cut back on the debt. We're never going to eliminate the debt. And the fact is, as long as a percentage of gross domestic product it stays equivalent, we're in good shape. But I don't want to become like Europe. I don't want a socialist country like Europe. I don't want us to have high taxation. I don't want to be frustrating initiative. I don't want to have classes competing against each other. We are the greatest economy in the world. We've been the greatest economy in the world. We're going to continue to be. And that's why I believe the tax cuts, while damaging as far as the property tax, sole deduction being gone, I oppose that. I'm going to fight against that. And that's why, again, Senator Schumer commended me for that, for my efforts in that, as did Governor Cuomo. But overall, the fact is we do not need more taxes. We do not need higher taxes. Our economy is the greatest in the world. It's the most expansive in the world, and will continue to be unless we have some kind of big tax increase. Tax increases generally bring in low revenues, and that's the reality, because you stunt the economy, the economic growth, which is, again, goes against all our traditions and goes against, to me, my concept of what the economy should be, with John Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, even under Bill Clinton.
Because of the Republican Republican tax bill, half of Long Islanders will see our taxes go up this year. Half of hardworking Long Islanders will see our taxes increase. And those of us who got a tax break, it's not permanent. Corporations got permanent tax cuts. Corporations who fund Mr. King's campaigns, they got permanent tax cuts. Mr. King said there was nothing wrong with cutting taxes on the wealthy. The reality is that when you cut taxes on the top 1% of people in this country, we have less money to invest in healthcare, in education, and in infrastructure. When you invest in infrastructure, you create jobs. When you have more money in the hands of corporate executives, they don't create jobs. They actually go out and buy things like yachts and third and fourth homes. When you have tax cuts on working Americans, we buy groceries, we start businesses, we go out and we go shopping. We are the job creators. We grow the economy. We need tax cuts for working Americans, not for people who are billionaires and millionaires, not for corporations. We need to make sure that the wealthy in this country is paying their fair taxes, because inequality is at such a high right now. Our deficit is twice what it was when Paul Ryan took over as Speaker of the House. Twice. This is not safe for our economy. We are going to have a crash. Our children are going to pick up the tab for these tax cuts for the millionaires and the billionaires in this country. The Republicans have already talked about cutting Medicare, cutting Social Security, cutting Medicaid to pay for these tax cuts. Tax cuts on the wealthy in this country does not grow our economy. Tax cuts for working Americans. That is how you grow an economy.
Our next question is, are you in favor of increased federal funding of infrastructure improvements? If so, can you identify at least 2 or 3 local projects or improvements that you think deserve federal funding that you would urge the federal government to support?
Yes, I do think that we need federal funding for infrastructure projects. Our roads are crumbling. Our bridges are crumbling. We need to put Americans back to work, actually solving our infrastructure crisis in this country. One of the things I think we should spend money on is sewers. We should invest in a sewer system for Long Island. That will actually help protect our environment and make sure that our homes have better property values. We need to invest in sewers. We need to invest in better public transportation. We need to invest in better roads. We need to invest in the Long Island Railroad and the Gateway Project. Everyone who commutes to the city, you know how long it takes. You know how long the wait times are. My husband commutes to the city every day and comes home. It takes him an hour and a half on some days. He gets stuck in Penn Station. We need investment in Penn Station. We need to fix our railroads. We need to fix our roads. We need to invest in sewers. And the best way to strengthen our economy is to actually invest in infrastructure. It puts people back to work. It creates good paying jobs, good union jobs. And that is how we grow our economy. And this is why we need to reverse this tax cut on the millionaires and the billionaires so that we have more money to invest in infrastructure.
First of all, as far as the tax cuts, John Kennedy said a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's the reality. If we want to have high taxes, we can go to Europe and see where their economy is compared to ours. As far as infrastructure, I was the one, again, working with Chuck Schumer, that got the Gateway Project put in the budget, kept in the budget, and worked hard to get it done. And that's essential, because that is going to provide increased transportation jobs for the entire northeastern region. As far as infrastructure itself, I am a strong advocate of infrastructure. We need improved highways, road systems, sewer systems, no doubt about it, bridges, tunnels. That's essential for the Northeast. I'm at the forefront of that, working with people on both sides of the aisle to get that done. And again, I emphasize when it came to Gateway, Senator Schumer and I were on the phone till 2 o'clock in the morning last year, making sure that that went through. And we got it through, and it was a hard fight. There's other parts of the country fought against us, but we got it through. I met personally with the president, got him to sign on to it, and that's where we are there today. So that's a major project where you work across the aisle, and you have to respect the people on both sides. You can get it done. It brings in jobs, it improves the economy, and it shows that we can get it done. You don't do it through higher taxes. You do it by allowing the American economy to expand and create jobs, create more jobs than any other country in the world ever has. Not by becoming a socialist haven like we see in Europe, which is always lagging behind us. The American economy is out front. It's there because there's initiative, and that, as it is now, 47% of the people in the country barely pay income tax anyway. The idea is we have to make sure that, again, tax cuts are across the board, they benefit everyone, and that's how the economy expands. I don't want to become Europe. I don't want to become stagnant. I want the United States to be stronger than ever, the way it has been over the years and will continue to be, as long as we resist these programs to increase taxes.
Good evening. Our next question also revolves around infrastructure. How should the security of our country's critical infrastructure be addressed, with the most prominent examples being power plants, fuel and water supply systems, etc., to avoid acts of terrorism that could have catastrophic effects? In addition, what measures can be taken to protect against cyber attacks against not only government agencies, but also critical businesses such as banking systems?
Yeah, being on both the Intelligence Committee and the Homeland Security Committee, this is an issue that I work on very carefully, very closely. The first thing we have to do is make an absolute commitment and keep our commitment to do all we can to fight terrorism, to kill them overseas before they get here, and there's strict programs here of monitoring and surveillance, and that's why I strongly support things like the Patriot Act, why it's important that we do have surveillance. It's why it's very important we stand with the police and the FBI. We're not be tying their hands in any way. We have to have security. Homeland security is absolutely essential. And it's important that we not be giving into political correctness. We not cave into political correctness. It's essential that we do what we have to do. I work very, very closely with the police here in Nassau County, Suffolk County, throughout the state of New York, and also federally, to make sure that we do have surveillance when it's needed. I make sure that we do have very strict procedures on security. I was chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. I led the hearings into radical infiltration of our country, extremist radicalization, Islamist radicalization in this country. It's important that we keep in mind that constantly we have the enemies trying to come in 24/7. And any of the police officers who are here tonight, anyone who's involved in internal security, knows how real those threats are. I never want to go through a 9/11. I don't want to give into political correctness. I want to make sure that we stop them before they get here, that we work closely with our allies overseas, that we work closely with the Israelis and the Jordanians, and with our European allies on this issue. And we make sure that we don't give them the opportunity to get here. If they are here, we have surveillance, we monitor them to make sure that we are kept as safe as we possibly can. We have an enemy that wants to kill us. I want to kill them before they kill us.
We need to make sure that we are strong on security. And one of the ways that we do that is making sure that our election systems are free and fair. The FBI, the CIA, and National Security Intelligence have all said, National Security Agency have all said that Russia infiltrated our elections. Our elections integrity is a very serious threat to our democracy. And Mr. King actually voted against legislation that would have provided increased funding to protect our election integrity. That is something that we need to make sure that we are doing, that we have free and fair elections, that foreign agents are not able to get involved in our election systems. The hearings that Mr. King is talking about were really McCarthy-style Muslim hearings. Mr. King has actually said that he supports surveillance on Muslim Americans. We have serious threats, but there are 2 billion Muslims in the world, and to target somebody based on their religion and to have security and surveillance on any Muslim American is wrong and it is un-American. We need to make sure that we have funding, that we have serious election integrity, that we have strong borders, that we are using modern forms of sensors and actual security for our borders, not a $20 billion border wall, which is not actually going to protect us. We need to make sure that we are working with border agents and that we have modern day technology to actually protect our borders. This is an issue that is deeply concerning to me. I lived through 9/11. I was evacuated from my building on the morning of 9/11. I went to New York University. These are things that we are concerned about, that we need to fight for, but this and targeting Muslim Americans does not keep us safe. It actually makes it more dangerous.
So I'm going to reword mine a little bit. Long Island is plagued with drugs and MS-13, both of which get in at our borders. So we'd like to know how, what's your plan to fight this, and if you agree with securing our borders.
Can I go first?
Yeah.
MS-13, anybody who lives in this community is concerned about MS-13. I am raising 2 children here. I am very much concerned with the safety and the security of our community. And this is not a partisan issue. This is something that we need to be working across the aisle to make sure that Democrats and Republicans are working to make sure that our police officers have the resources that they need. Mr. King did bring the president here. He missed a very important opportunity to invite Representatives Rice and Swazi, County Executive Steve Ballone. County Executive Laura Kern was invited and given a seat in the audience and not able to participate. That is not working across the aisle to make sure that we have Democrats and Republicans to work to get the resources we need. We need federal resources for our law enforcement. We need federal resources for organizations that are already working in the community, like the Council of Unity, like Strong Youth, that are working to provide after-school programs, job training programs, community development programs to get to the children before the gangs do. We need real solutions. And one of the most important things we can do is have common sense immigration reform. We have 7,100 TPS recipients, temporary protected status, in our district. It's the largest portion of TPS recipients in any congressional district across the country. And I actually took petitions to Peter King's office about a year and a half ago and asked him to support extending TPS. These are people who have been in our community for decades, who pay taxes, who own homes, who employ native-born Long Islanders. The immigrant population in our community is the #1 targeted by MS-13. When Tim Sini was the police commissioner, he said by not extending TPS, it actually makes our job more difficult because those immigrants are now no longer going to talk to the police, report on what MS-13 is doing, because they're afraid that they're going to be deported.
The fact is, I do support TPS, but also the other reality is MS-13 is a real devastating threat to Long Island. And that's why I work closely with Commissioner Senior, who's police commissioner, and now he's district attorney. I work very closely with Police Commissioner Wright out here. And I work extremely closely, again, in Nassau County with Pat Wright and also with District Attorney Singers. The fact is that MS-13 is a deadly, deadly threat to Long Island. It is a devastating threat, primarily in the communities of Central, Islip, and Brentwood, and we cannot give into them in any way. And it's essential that we realize that MS-13 members who are here in this country, mostly young people, 13, 14, 15 years old, and we have to stop them, we have to stop them, we have to make sure as they're coming in that there's much more scrutiny given. We can't just have people going into school districts, and again, recruiting, we have MS-13 in Long Island, the largest recruiting does occur in Central Islip and Brentwood. It's essential we do all we can to stop it. And I work closely again with Tim Sheedy. I work very closely with Pat Ryder. I work very closely again with all law enforcement officials and with the President and the Attorney General. And I've done it in a bipartisan way. It's essential that MS-13 be crushed and be destroyed because the people it's terrorizing are not the white middle-class people. They're going after the immigrant community. And we have to put political correctness aside. We have to do all we can to crush MS-13. I've been in the forefront of that. I'm proud that I brought in the President. I'm glad I brought in the Attorney General. I will continue to do that, and I will stand with the police. We cannot be giving into political correctness when it comes to MS-13. We know where the communities are in, and we have to be monitoring them and looking very carefully at them, and that's why we have to do all we can. Again, we cannot allow MS-13 to be destroying the young people, and the people it's destroying are not the white middle-class people. They're going after other immigrants. They're going after young kids and macheting them and chopping them to death. These are the most hideous, vicious criminals we're aware of. We have to do all we can to stop them. As long as I'm in Congress, I'll continue to do it.
Thank you.
May I add something? You had a few extra seconds there. May I just add something to my answer?
No, I cut him off at that time, so he didn't have it. Again, we're not doing a debate.
It's not a
we're just
back and
doing
forth. It was just something I wanted to add.
In your closing, you'll have a chance in your closing. You'll have a chance in your closing. Thank you.
So it looks I'm going to be the last question of the night, so you'll both have your 5 minutes closings, and you obviously can address the issue that you'd like to talk about. In 2008, a survey from the Long Island Index found a total of 59% of all adults and 71% of young adults said that they are likely to leave Long Island in the next 5 years. Why do you think so many young adults want to leave Long Island, and is there anything that you can be done at the federal government level to prevent this from happening?
Hello? My turn? Okay. Yeah, there's no doubt there has been a drain from Long Island. It's been going on for a number of years. Partly it's because New York has shortchanged. New York, the system has gotten shortchanged under all administrations and all Congresses. I've been fighting in the Congress. Steve Israel and I used to have joint legislation to try to bring more aid to Long Island. I have fought hard for that, and I will continue to fight. The main way to do it, though, is to expand the economy, to grow the economy, to make sure that we really keep as many young people here as possible. I think what has to be done, a lot of it's done at the local level, we should get federal support. We have to have downtown rezoning. We have to make sure that communities like Baldwin and Nassau County, as done out here in Patchogue, as we're trying to do in Wyandanch. These are communities that have to revive downtown communities, make housing more affordable. It's essential we do that, so we make sure we keep young people here. To do that is to have a strong economy, have more jobs, and that's why we can't be raising federal income taxes. It's bad enough. We have high property taxes here on Long Island. The fact is we have to do all we can to encourage jobs to come here. And again, I work closely with people in both parties to get that done. But the reality is that we have to realize that Long Island has changed. And we have to realize that downtown areas, we can get more multifamily housing, if we can encourage businesses to come in, give business incentives to come in, has been done, for instance, in Farmingdale in Nassau County. It's done an excellent job. Patchogue has been a leader in that here in Suffolk County. Baldwin is trying to do it right now. And this is an issue that should be bipartisan, find ways to get it done. But again, to bring business in, to encourage young people to stay here, again, by having more housing available to them, again, more affordable housing for young people, young working people, is a way to get it done. I think I just got the bell.
That last bell gives you another 15 seconds, just so you both know. That second bell gives you the last 15 seconds to close up.
Mr. King keeps
Now that we're
talking
done.
about not increasing taxes. Your taxes were just increased. 47% of Long Islanders just got increases on your taxes. That is the reality. And his party voted for that. And he did not, despite the 25 years that Mr. King has been in office, did not protect you. You just got a tax increase. The millionaires got a tax cut. That is not strengthening our economy. I have an MBA in economics. I work in economic development. I have spent 17 years helping to build strong economies. And the reality is, the way that you grow a strong economy is when you have tax cuts for working Americans. You are the job creators. Do not let people tell you differently, because you are the job creators. You go out and you spend money when you have money in your pocket. Every person that I talk to who is young is leaving. They can't afford to buy homes here. In the 25 years that Mr. King has been in office, the cost of living has increased, the cost of education has increased, your taxes have gone up, your wages have stayed stagnant. We need to make sure that we have a representative who is fighting for the working people, not the wealthy donors. You cannot have changes to the system when you have somebody fighting for corporations and wealthy donors. We need tax cuts for working Americans. You want to start a small business? So many people that I have talked to said they can't afford to. They need to stay in their job because they need their health care. Improved and expanded Medicare for all actually helps people become entrepreneurs. They will not be tied to jobs they don't love for health care. They will go out and start businesses. When we have tax cuts on working Americans and people have money in their pocket, they start small businesses. We need affordable housing on Long Island. We need tax cuts for working Americans. We need investment in renewable energy and green jobs, because that is the growing population of jobs. We need investment in our community, and we need tax cuts for working Long Islanders.
Thank you. We're now going to do a 3-minute closing. You'll begin, and then the incumbent will finish up. Again, the same time limits approved.
Eileen, I thought it was 5 minutes.
3 minutes or 5 minutes? 3 minutes. Yeah, 3 minutes closing, so you can address anything.
Okay, so thank you for taking the time to come here today to listen to our positions on these issues. For too long, your voices have been drowned out by corporate money and special interests, and by representatives who refuse to meet with you. When I asked Mr. King to hold a town hall and he told me that it would diminish democracy, that was shocking to me, that a representative would not at least meet with our constituents. I got a meeting with Mr. King, but it was because I had 400 people protest in front of his office. On the Friday that we had that protest, I called and I said, I'd like to come in and sit down and speak with you. And they told me to come in at 3:30 in the afternoon, and by the time I got there, they had locked their office doors and sent the staff home. And that is what is wrong with government today, that we have representatives who refuse to do the job. I have spent more than a year crisscrossing this district talking to people, because if you don't understand the issues, if you don't live them every day, and if you're not talking to people, you can't advocate. You cannot advocate in Washington, D.C. for you when you don't get the issues. We need people in D.C. who get these issues because they live them every day. I grew up here. I have never seen this kind of grassroots energy. We have people from across the political spectrum out knocking on doors. We have more individual contributors than anyone who has ever run against Mr. King. We outraised Mr. King by more than $500,000 from small dollar donations because people want to be heard. People want to have their voice heard, and the only way that you can do that is by listening. We have 3 offices across the district. We have knocked on more than 100,000 doors, and every time you knock on someone's door, they say, "Oh my God, you're the first person to ever come to my door. This is exciting. What can I do? How can I get involved? How can I help?" People in this country right now cannot access health care. We have rising sea levels. We have a mass incarceration problem. We have people who are working 3 jobs all across our district and can't put food on the table for their children. No one working full-time in our country should be living in poverty. That is just a fact. We need to strengthen our economy, and the best way to do that is to make sure that everyone has a fighting chance. We need to make sure that we are working for working people. We need to have somebody who is listening. And I am so honored that I have taken the last year to meet all of you. And every time that Mr. King talks about Senator Schumer or Governor Cuomo, they have both endorsed me. Senator Gillibrand has endorsed me. Senator Cuomo has Governor Cuomo has endorsed. Senator Schumer has endorsed. We have so much labor support. We have support from the United Auto Workers Union, from the Teachers Union, it's incredible. IBEW, we have union support, we have labor support, we have people who are concerned that Mr. King supported privatizing Social Security, that he voted to take health care away from 74,000 people. We want a representative who will fight for everyone in this district, and that is what we're doing.
Let's try to get some of the facts straight. First of all, my office, the reason they closed was when they were coming to the office with demonstration. I was still in Washington. The police told us to shut down the office if they were afraid there'd be trouble. And the people in the building, the other tenants, the building manager shut down the building. That's why I was not there. I met with your people. I meet with more groups than anyone. I was not.
Please, 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 folks. Thank you.
Here, thank you. I have met hundreds and hundreds of people. If you want to take the health care bill, I met with unions, I met with people from various different illnesses, advocacy groups, with hospitals. That's why, again, and there was a full-page ad taken out in Newsday from hospitals and unions commending me for my leadership on health care, because they knew that I was trying to find a solution. Now, for instance, under Obamacare, premiums have gone up 105%, and almost 5 million people have lost their coverage. I want to take the best of both. That's what I'm trying to do, which is why I've been voted the most bipartisan member of Congress year after year. That's out of 435 members. 4 years in a row, I was the most bipartisan. The last 2 years, I've been the most bipartisan all down state New York. That's all of New York City, and that's all of Long Island. So that's the reality on that. The fact is, I'm in there fighting strongly for Homeland Security, standing up against terrorism, standing up in defense of the police. I'm never going to turn my back on the police the way others have done. And I will stand with ICE because they are performing a great service. I know one of the debates my opponent said that ICE is taking children away from parents. No, that's not, that has nothing to do with ICE at all. We can't be making those type of mistakes. The stakes are too high for us to be doing that. We can't be getting involved in class warfare. I can give a list a mile long of unions that are supporting me. I'm supported by business, I'm supported by labor, because I believe we have to work together. We have to find a way to come together. That's why I'm leading the effort against MS-13. That's why I've been in the forefront of that. And as far as Senator Schumer, Governor Cuomo, yeah, I understand why they endorse him as a Democrat. You cannot find them saying one word critical of me. But you can find the good words when Governor Cuomo says, God bless, thank God for Peter King. When Senator Schumer says I'm a man of tremendous integrity, hanging down the line, the things have been said in my favor by Democrats. Where I'm not in for people who say good things about me. I only get the job done. I've gotten it done. I'll continue to get it done, and I'll be re-elected as your congressman to do that job and fight in Washington for all of you. Thank you.
leave, lock the doors. Just kidding. Before everyone leaves, first of all, we'd like to take some pictures with you guys, so if you guys can just stay for a few minutes, we'd appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I'd just like to say a few words about civic organizations before we end tonight's event. The definition of civic responsibility is defined as the responsibility of a citizen, according to dictionary.com. It is comprised of actions and attitudes associated with democratic governance and social participation. Civic responsibility can include, I don't know what's wrong with my mouth today, first day, participation in government, church, volunteers, and memberships of voluntary organizations. Actions of civic responsibility can be displayed in advocacy for various causes, such as political, economic, civil, and environmental, and quality of life issues. Civic associations help to stabilize, preserve, and revitalize our areas. They not only connect neighbors, but they also give us a strong voice with our elected officials to continue to serve us as their constituents. We urge you guys to join your local civic today. Please see the civic representative sign-in sheets and member forms up at the table in the front to sign up today. You can participate as little or as much as you'd like, but your dues do help to allow us to continue to work to improve our areas. Our 5 civics joined together to bring you this informational event, and I want to thank the candidates for participating tonight and allowing our community to be informed voters. I've already done that, thank you. A big thank you to the Greater Sayville Civic for organizing our newly formed ICC, and a thank you to Bohemia, Ronkonkoma, Idlehour, and Oakdale Civics as well for coming together to not only bring you this event, but to also continue to work together for the betterment of our town as a whole. A round of applause, too, for the kids tonight who are learning the civic responsibility. And finally, thank all of you for coming out tonight to learn about the candidates. Don't forget to vote, and have a great night. Thank you. Can we get some pictures with the civics? Yeah. Yes.